Hello and welcome to Access Astrology. We are three astrologers who've been working together for decades, Mark Wiltz, Ann Ortley, and myself, Heather Rowan Robbins. Tonight I'm talking to you from Ronan, Montana. I hope to be joined by Ann Ortley later from Florida, and Mark Wiltz is out for the week, off on an adventure. We'll be back. We're going to talk about the astrology of this moment in time in history. We're going to talk about Pope Francis's chart and his time of death, and answer the question from one of our audience members. If you'd like to have us talk about your chart in the future, please email me or Anne or Mark your birth information, and we'll get your chart up in the rota. So tonight, and you can always see it later on YouTube Astrology. Tomorrow on YouTube, April 24th, I will be doing a talk about the month ahead and an interview with the astrologer Frederick Woodruff, who is just a hoot and a dear and thoughtful soul. So let's talk about the chart for tonight at first. And we see there's an interesting pattern going on. Tonight, the sun is in Taurus, moon is in Aquarius, Venus in Pisces, and Mercury is well into Aries now. It's just pulling away from its conjunction to Neptune. So that sense of unreality and people saying the strangest things, as we can see in the news, is up and running and still strong. But the most powerful aspect that we're seeing, besides the fact that the sun is still flaring and has been flaring for a long time, this particular cycle. We had northern lights up here, but of course it snowed here in Montana just on as the northern lights were at their peak. So I didn't get to see it, but I gather a lot of people did. But this Mars-Pluto opposition, now Mars has about a 2-year cycle, a little less around the zodiac. So roughly every 2 years it opposes Pluto. This year it opposed Pluto the week of our last election on November 3rd. And then, or whatever that day that was that week, it was exact that week, but that was in Cancer and Capricorn because it was the last pass of Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto, the planet of power, structure, form, with that opposition, right as this election occurred, worried me that we were going back to some old power struggles. And sure enough, now then Mars, then went ahead and turned retrograde, backing up and opposing Pluto exactly again, only this time from Leo to Aquarius, because Pluto went into Aquarius in, at the end of December and we'll be there for a nice long time. It's not retrograding back into Cancer again. So it'll be there for well over a decade. The Pluto opposed Mars just as the year began. So the beginning of this administration and the beginning of this year had Pluto opposed Mars in their inception charts. And it's now exact again this week, Pluto to Mars. And it's not that rare an example. It can be quite powerful. It works forward in good ways. We can get the momentum going. But with that lineup, how do we take it and how do we work with it? Now, for all of us, you think back on how you felt and at the beginning of November, how you felt at the beginning of this new year. Notice what issues were up for you. We can see what's happening in the world political sphere. We see those power struggles that are clashing straight ahead. And there will be they won't be over after this week, but you will see some denouement, some collision that identifies the pattern and clarifies it in the months ahead. So watch for those collisions. Look for quite literal explosions or collisions. It's not so explosive because it's in fixed signs. It's more like collisions, more like tectonic plates shifting. We may actually see some earthquakes or the volcano cooking, but it's more likely that we'll see the emotional political gestalt that mirrors that sense of tension between those plates. So look for that this week. We can also use that energy to put determination into anything we want to do. Remember, every single aspect, planetary placement, house placement, sign, has 180 degrees of expression. It has its challenge, the practical aspect of it, and the gift. And we get to choose how we respond. We don't get to choose when they show up or how they're hitting our chart, but we can choose how we respond. The positive side, the challenging side of this Mars-Pluto aspect is very clear. It is a collision because it's also in direct square to that sun in Taurus, and it is opposed the empty corner of the T-square. It will be in Scorpio, taking its sound deep and heavy. And then when we see that T-square cooking in, we can use it in many positive ways. We can use it to empower ourselves, or we can deal with this direct power struggle. I see Anne. Anne is joining us now. Hi, Florida.
In Florida, still in Florida, at sunset here on the lovely Boca Ciega Bay.
Oh, how beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The sun is setting. Let me turn the camera lights a little more lit. But yeah,
so we were talking about that T-square with Mars, Pluto, and the sun, and how it echoed the first of this year and election day when those Mars, Pluto were exact. How would you say people can use this energy? Because we see how it's acting out in the world, but what can we use this kind of combustion engine towards?
Well, the thing to remember is as Mars is approaching his opposition to Pluto, he's building up. He's building up a head of steam. And so we often have the action of the Mars as it's coming in before the perfection, which is at the end of the week. This is the third pass.
On April 26th.
Yeah, this is the third pass. Mars was opposite Pluto back in November 3rd.
Right on election day.
We had it on January 3rd. And then now we have the third pass. So we're learning what our journey is to be. And Mars and Pluto are a war aspect, but they're also a standing up and saying, hey, what are you doing? So just as we were about to go on air, I got distracted because 60 Minutes, the producer of it, resigned because they're being sued by the Trump administration.
Wow.
And he resigned saying, I can't do the show the way I want to because, 60 Minutes and Paramount have business before the executive branch. And I guess they're afraid of losing that contract. So, he quit after many years there. He's only the third guy in charge of 60 Minutes. And, and I was like, that's the Mars Pluto opposition. Like, I can't.
Power struggles.
Power struggles. I can't fight this. But it's a fixed T-square.
Or I fight it by getting out of here.
I fight it by leaving and saying, hey, here's my resignation letter, and I'm gone. Now, the other thing we're having is the Venus-Saturn conjunction. We've had 3 of those, too. Now, she was only retrograde for 40 days, but she went over Saturn 3 times, and she's on him completing her story tomorrow, and then she dives into the nodes of fate like Saturn did on Monday when the Pope died. So we're at a very critical crossroads. So that Mars Pluto is like, I have been struggling with you about this for a while, and now I am what? And we have to make action. And as Mars goes past Pluto, we're freed up. But right now it can feel very emotionally bound up and, just trapped. Like I'm trapped. You're not trapped. It's
choose your fights very carefully.
And you want to, and also you might need a good fight, I went to the Easter dinner we had, and of course I know where this aspect is in my chart, and the condo board president is a Trumper. And, so we got into a big thing about the people getting hauled off to the camps, right? Hauled off to the prison in El Salvador. And illegal migrants, he's pounding the table. He's all red. I mean, people were saying to me at coffee today, I didn't want to come over because I said, no, he needed a good fight. I needed a good fight. It was like, great. We had this great fight. And, so if you can do it like that, and, I'm a good fighter. I have Mercury Mars square. So I was like, so, you're kind of Irish looking. When did you come over? You guys came over in the Revolutionary War. My parents fought in the Revolution. My grandfather fought in the I said, so you came over without papers and invaded the country. You were not legal. You didn't have any paper. Well. And then we fought in the Civil War too. I'm like, okay, what state? North Carolina. I said, so at that time you lost. You fought on the side that lost. Because there you believe people should be prisoner, enslaved. So you're wrong again. Because you're technically illegal. You didn't have papers. And so it was, and he got really mad at me. And I'm like, hey,
good work.
Everybody that wasn't born here as an indigenous person, they're all migrants. Right. Sorry, I'm migrant. I came potato famine for the Irish side. For the German side, my relative got in a little contretemps and was told to leave the country, and he did. And he came to America. And that's, that's the Mars-Pluto.
Right.
And so our job is pick your fights, and you may need to fight, or you may need to make a strategic descent, like the guy that retired 60
minutes. That extra corner of the fourth corner is Scorpio.
It's Scorpio.
So that can be like, okay, I will fight again another day. I'm going to leave this battlefield because I want to be ready to fight when the time comes.
Yeah. And also
to make it strategic.
Yeah. And when you know that, you're just like, all right, I'm thinking about my options. And the other thing is the Venus, Saturn are on the North Node of Fate. Saturn was there Monday when the Pope died, right after war. He's got a great chart because he has those Capricorn planets in the 7th. So he said mass and then he croaked.
Yeah, I'm going to pull those up. It's beautiful.
I mean, it was a great death chart. But yes, when you die, you have a chart too, which says what you did. And he has a great chart. But
and how your memory will be remembered.
Yes, but said mass. It said the sunrise mass and then croaked at 7:30. You can't make it up.
Yeah,
the energy is very intense this week, and as Venus goes past Saturn for her third time, and Mars goes past Pluto for his third, we're going to feel like, oh my God, I've been released. It is a huge breakup week, though, like breaking up with people, And I will say, with these aspects, you're not going back because you're done. I mean, you might.
And that's because both Venus and Mars, the two emotional planets, are dancing with major outer planet heavy hitters. We got Mars with Pluto and Venus with Saturn. So you're making important decisions. This will show up in work that you've already done. Be careful of last minute decisions. If this is like, I'm leaving you today, can take a deep breath and wait a minute. Right. But if it's been something you've been working on, especially over those last three passes, it may be time to make a decision. That's the strategic.
It's from last fall. It's from last fall. So it's also, making choices, taking a stand, and everybody's going to do it their own way. So that's the other part. You want to be able, when you get up in the morning, to look at yourself in the mirror and go, I'm pleased with the decision I make. I'm comfortable with it. I'm making a decision about my karma because the Saturn and the node are joined.
Yep.
Right. So it's very important. Whatever the decision you make now has a huge repercussion for the next 30 years of your life. And you want to make as wise a decision as you can.
Right. The sun had just squared Mars yesterday. Its sun's in that T-square, but it perfected its square to Mars yesterday. It's going to perfect its square to Pluto tomorrow.
Right.
And I think we're going to see some more news about the ramifications of what's happening. And it's going to affect the stock market. It's going to affect everything.
Yeah. And it's an emotional T-square.
Now, remember, any combustion engine like this is a real combustion engine. It's really moving. And we're heading into the Aries moon on Friday. You can use it for if you have a clear something that you are for, not just against, but that you are for. It is a powerful engine to make things happen. Yeah. I'm watching neighbors build a rock wall with huge rocks, and they're just cooking through it. And it feels like a good use of the muscularness of this action.
It's energy, right?
Give yourself, if you're, go chop wood carefully, but go chop wood. Do something with this. Take on a frustration. You put it into spring cleaning. Take on a challenge and put that energy into it so it doesn't just sort of erupt unnecessarily. This can be used for good as well as to the world political experience.
And remembering, because the Mercury and Neptune are trying to the Mars. So, I know the aspects, right? So I bought this condo. I've been a renter for years, so home maintenance is not on my. You've had many places with Ren. She's always working on projects, doing stuff like go do things, right?
Being married to an Aries, right?
An Aries, yeah. So so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, so I had the air conditioner guy come, and yesterday on the Mars-Pluto opposition, these two guys, Corey and Cody. Gemini, they're twins, came and they cleaned my vents. They
Oh,
vacuumed out all
beautiful
my
example.
7 vents. I had the order was for 6, but they found a 7th, so they cleaned them all out. And they said, we don't think these were ever cleaned out. So it's 46 years of dust in my vents that got vacuumed out, and then they scrubbed my grates and all this stuff.
It's a beautiful use of the
It's
energy.
a great use of that Mars-Pluto. So and they told me you had this vent that was turned off, and it was aimed at the wall, so there was a little mold, so we scrubbed that off. And so last night around 4 in the morning, you're gonna like this, Mars-Pluto, the T-square shoots into Scorpio, right? I get up, I hobble into the bathroom with my walker, and I'm sitting on the toilet, and I'm in a friggin' blast furnace of cold air. And the 7th vent was the vent in the bathroom that I'd never noticed, that they'd opened and cleaned out. And I'm sitting on the toilet having this cold air. Like, what the hell? I'm in a wind tunnel in my own John. And it was, the Scorpio.
Yeah, so watch out that you don't do things too vigorously. That can be, you can overshoot the mark on that.
Like,
it can be very funny.
That's the vent. It's like you're in the bathroom at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, what is going on in here? But
so here's Pope Francis's chart. Let's take a quick look at that and his death chart. And we've got one other person to look at.
Let's also talk. There's a new moon on. Did you do the new moon on coming up on Sunday?
This weekend? No, we'll come back to that, and we'll talk about the new moon. I didn't put up the new moon, but it's a new moon in Taurus. It's the most fertile new moon in the year. Be very careful what you plant.
Right.
If you don't want a baby, use good birth control. If you want something growing in a garden, put it in on that new moon.
It is going to grow. Yeah.
New ideas, new thoughts, new book proposals, anything. I think the new moon in Taurus is the most fertile time in the year to plant actual seeds. That moon in Gemini midweek next week we'll talk about that next week, but it's really powerful.
But also that Taurus moon is, because it is so fertile, and because Venus is now escaped from Saturn by the time we have that moon. She's like, oh man, do I want to grow things, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like when you go off a diet and you're like, oh, I want a piece of carrot cake, is that kind of,
hungry.
It's a hungry moon, yeah.
It's definitely hungry. Be careful what you feed it, be careful what you seed, but enjoy.
Yeah.
So back to Pope Francis, poor baby.
It's at 7 degrees Taurus too, so it's in the middle of that T-square. So the stuff that you're figuring out now is part of that new moon coming in too. Go. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go.
That's okay. We got the new moon. We'll go back to his natal chart. Pope Francis, we have him at 9 p.m., but we know that's approximate. But wonderful Sagittarius, moon in Aquarius with a Cancer rising. He wants to take care of everybody. That moon Venus conjunction in Aquarius right on the 7th and 8th, he really did partner with the public. He really was partner with the people and wanted to see change happen and made it happen. Uranus was the planet at the top of his charts.
He was
all about service. And then we go to what was happening. There was an exact Moon-Pluto conjunction on at his time of death. Yep. And it was sitting right near this.
Right next to this. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had already just been through some really kind of tough aspects with his Sun, Saturn by progression conjunct. There were several things that said it was a close call that he didn't come through that he didn't die earlier. Right. In this time. What did you see? I mean, I just see what a great exit chart. Like he was done. He'd done his work. He had said what he needed to say. He said goodbye to everybody on Easter. He made a beautiful last statement and then left quickly.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple things that I really liked about this chart is, because he's born on an eclipse. His sun is on the North Node. And so during the eclipse last month, when they were like, you want us to turn off life support, he's like, no, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. Speaking to that Jupiter and Cap in the 6th, I still have work to do. And I think that was a natural departure time for him. And he was like, not going. And I'm reminded of Ruth Bader Ginsburg dying right before the New Year, Rosh Hashanah, when you write your name in the Book of Life, and Pope Francis dying right after Easter, the holiest time of the year for the Catholics. So the two of them, these big visionary people, leaving at the high holy days of their faith.
Yeah.
And the other thing I loved about this departure chart was, we have modern medicine that interrupts us and makes us, makes us stay longer, which is what he did. He said, no, I'm not ready to go. But then they were like, honey, you've already overstayed your time. Come on. He's like, I got to yell at JD Vance one more time.
One more time.
So, I have some very cynical friends. So they were like, JD Vance poison in the chalice in the chapel. And we were like laughing. Remember you played Clue, Mrs. Colonel Mustard, with the wrench in the library and whatever. But he actually yelled at JD Vance. He had his assistant yell at him, and then he met him, and he probably said a couple things to him about, you'd be a better guy than what you've been.
Right. And he made his statement very clear on his Easter thing.
And he was a pope. Remember, he's the first Francis pope. And St. Francis was 1,000 in the 1,000. So when he left his wealthy father and he went out into the Times Square and he said, I'm going to give up my wealth and I'm going to go serve the people. And he piled his wealth in the square and put on a brown frock with a little rope belt with poverty, chastity, obedience, and went off as a monk to serve. And the Canticle of the Sun, brother, sun, sister, moon. And he lived in Europe also, or not in Europe, in Argentina. He didn't live in the papal palace. He lived in like a regular room. He ate dinner in a regular place. He really met the people. Thursday before he died, he went and washed the feet of prisoners. A service. And also with the Venus moon in Aquarius, he said Hindu, Jewish, Buddhist, whatever, it's the same God. We just get there different ways. And he opened up the church in many ways to make it a welcome place.
And he really did. He really kind of brought it to the heart.
Well, and St. Francis was like, the church is rich and powerful, and that is not what the church is for. It's here to serve the poor and the indigent and to help people. And so he, by being the first Franciscan Pope, first St. Francis, there's Pope John Paul II, Pope, they all have numbers because there's been a couple of them before. But him claiming that reformer, because St. Francis reformed the church. And so he did that. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But I noticed he had progressed Mars in Scorpio for a very long time. And just recently his progressed Mars went into Sag.
That's beautiful.
It answers to that fallen Jupiter.
And it trines Neptune. Yeah. And like all the things about it. Jupiter's now in his 12th house. He's really ready to ascend. He's ready to get out of there. And he made it through his third Saturn return. Bless him for all that work. And I think, we're going to really see that memory, that it's going to sit well with his memory, that his exit chart really leaves, like it punctuates and sets up a good resonance.
Do you have the one just for the time of his departure in Rome?
See. I will. I don't have it directly here.
When you guys pull that chart, 735 Rome, it's Uranus on the ascendant. And he, of course, is a Uranus on the midheaven. And so he was the Uranian Pope. He came in and he said,
made differences.
I'm going to change things around. And you can see that progressed sun in Taurus right at the top of the chart coming to his Uranus and his Venus. He did a lot of changes. It's very cool.
It is. It's beautiful. And so I want to, before we go on to the one person, we have a request from a person.
Yep, great.
Today. And I also wanted to say to all the other wonderful people that I see showing up, that we need to prepare your charts ahead of time now to get them up on the charts. So send your email to hrowanrobbins@gmail.com or to Anne.
At AnneOrtley.com.
And we will get the charts ready for you next week. You can always, and if you can't make it during the live, it'll be on YouTube and you can go further. Make sure that you give us your birth information and a specific question because we have to get to the point here. So this is for, and we can stay a few minutes extra because we can on this form, and we will make sure that we answer this person's questions. So this person was born with a Mercury-Pluto conjunction, a good Virgo like the rest of us here, Virgo moon in Aries like me, so I sympathize, with the Sag rising, born with Neptune on the ascendant, but she has Jupiter in Aquarius at 2 degrees and trining her Sun Pluto conjunction at 1 to 3 degrees of Libra. And that resonates to Saturn over here at 3 degrees of Taurus. And Pluto's setting it off like a dinner bell right now. What would you, I'm going to pull up her, we can just kind of, I want to go back to the other one. Her progressed moon's in Pisces down at the bottom of the chart at the moment. So I want to come back to her natal chart because it's easier to read at the moment. What do you think she could do with all of that, with Pluto ringing that pattern off like a bell?
Well, I mean, it is really active, and it's a Pluto trine Pluto, so that's good because Pluto's now over by your Jupiter. So he has a normal journey where he hangs out with Mercury, and he's very intense and very deep communication and thinking. Now he's over with your Jupiter, and he's saying, okay, what do you need to do with this? What do you need to do with all these deep thoughts? And she has what's called a minor talent trine, or a minor grand trine, which is the Jupiter trine the Pluto Mercury. And then Neptune is the apex of it. So that's what we're having in the sky right now. Neptune and Mercury.
The apex. Grand trine here. That's the that's two planets sextile to a third point.
To the third point, the Neptune. So whatever she's being inspired to do, career-wise, writing-wise, communication, she should do. She's been getting, beaten up a bit by the planets, and might be a little depressed because Saturn's been going through her third house. But it's a lot of energy around revisiting the rules she was taught. A lot of times with a chart like this, the rules are a little dogmatic. And so now she's developing her own rules for her own self.
Right.
And so that's important. Yeah.
Her progressed moon is in Pisces, right at the bottom of the chart. So this is on a more introspective way, even though there's a lot cooking in her work world. It's doing some deep introspection. What I see also, I would ask her to go back to what were the family dynamics in those first 5 years of her life.
Yeah.
As her progressed Mercury conjunct Pluto, trine this and squared that there was some family dynamics that she imprinted that wasn't her story but was around her that really affected her and helped her take things seriously. I like that Mercury Saturn square. It's not it can deal with depression, but I see it in people who finish degrees, finish books, finish projects,
right,
and
especially
see things
through. Saturn rules her north node,
right,
but you're clearing out that old. Remember, the 8th house is the psychological crap you get from your family when you're growing up. And so in a case with the sun,
your inheritance,
the sun and the moon in a little bit of an argument, you're now setting yourself free, basically. And so that's the important thing, is to say, okay, that was the rules I was taught. Are those the rules I still believe? And if not, what rules do I believe now? And so that's, Mercury, Pluto. Why? Because remember, whatever Mercury says, he's the highest planet. Whatever he says goes. He's the boss. He's the boss of the Jupiter. He's the boss of your relationship to other people, your 7th house. He's the boss of your work. He's the boss of your belief systems. He rules your career direction. So he's a big hoo-ha. And so being very conscious of your words and your thoughts and your ideas, and going back to when they were, to Heather's point, imprinted, that's the Saturn on the south node. Right. And also very possibly the Saturn and the Neptune are quincunx. They're arguing with each other, but they're getting married this year. So they're kind of trying to come up with a new definition of who you are and what's important to you. And they're getting married in 0 Aries down in your 4th house. They're kind of saying, we're putting a new infrastructure in for you. You're getting a new bridge built.
Go back to 2008 to 2011 when Pluto was setting this pattern off in a square pattern.
Yeah.
Was opposing that Saturn. Again, this is the next stage of healing and empowerment and processing what happened then, composting it to turn it into the golden jewels for your future.
Yeah.
Got a powerful lot of healing going on through that.
I always love when you use composting. That's one of my favorite terms, and I've never heard anybody say it but you. And I'm like, that is such a good, rich word. You know?
Yeah, it's like, how do we take what's fallen apart and what was difficult and turn it into what fertilizes our future?
Yeah.
So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
One comment from our audience is they saw a lot of literal collisions on the way home from work this evening. With that,
remember, everybody's having this transit, so they're all in the mood to hit each other.
Right?
Mars-Pluto.
Seriously,
Mars is metal and cars, and you just cut me off, and I'm in a.
So watch for the road rage. Drive carefully. It's a time to really speak up and get things going, but put safety first.
Right.
Is what I would say.
And remember, everybody's having these transits, including you, so they might not be as focused and as conscious as you because you listen to the astrology. You learn. So there's a Mars-Pluto, everybody's in the mood. So when I had that fight with Jim, I was like, I am into having a fight. This is good. Yeah. And everybody was like, were you okay? I'm like, oh, I love to fight. I don't get to do it that often. And the sky says fight. Go and have a good fight, so.
Good to have a good debate. You can keep it to a debate and keep it from a fight, but it is not time to, if you poke someone, expect them to respond like Ann did when this guy was.
He was all red. He was
not being honest with himself.
And everything. And everybody was like, he was all red and pounding the table. I said, I know, it was fun. You're a liberal. You're a progressive liberal. Blue, you get out of that blue.
And proud of it. Thank you.
Yes, this is like, it's good.
So everybody have as safe and positive, good week as they can in this powerful thing. Give yourself a good challenge to work with. Any last words, Ann?
Yeah, a lot of people are having a hard time, so be kind. Be kind, be kind. Lead with kindness. And just kind of say, okay, how you doing? I mean, I've actually had a couple people come to mind and call and caught them crying. So I'm like, clearly the psychic friend hotline is churning in my brain, so.
Yeah. And if you need to talk to us privately and have us look at your chart, Heather Rowan Robbins at rowanrobbins.com and Ann
Ortley at annortley.com.
Wonderful. And we will see you next week. Safe and exciting and potentially revolutionary week. Take care.
A big week. Bye. Bye. So long. Wait for our little red light to go off there. I always like this. Can you stay a second after we're done? Okay, cool.
Okay.